Okay, first, and I apologize, Ms. Rodriguez, I have you first. IDEC, could you please come over here to the microphone? Then everybody can hear you.
Hi, good morning. Thank you to Salton Authority for holding this meeting and for the opportunity to comment. My name is Aida Rodriguez with Alianza Coachella Valley. I would like to take a moment to highlight the work Alianza Coachella Valley is leading to advance a multi-benefit infrastructure, particularly development of a connected, safe trail network around the Salton Sea region. We believe this effort strongly complements the important restoration and mitigation work the authority and its partners are carrying out. It is essential that investments at the Salton Sea prioritize projects that are not only recreational, but also deliver meaningful public health and economic benefits to disadvantaged communities around the Salton Sea. With the remaining Prop 68 funds, we need a clear path with defined next steps and realistic timeline to ensure the project moves forward and can effectively leverage new funding opportunities, including Proposition 4. We appreciate the authority's continued commitment to the region's health, resilience, and quality of life. And we look forward to ongoing collaboration to ensure that multi-benefit projects remain centered in the broader vision for our Salton Sea communities. Thank you.
Thank you. I will next call on Camila Batista.
Yes. Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Camila Bautista. I'm with Audubon, California. And I'm just going to comment similar to Aide. But through our ongoing bird monitoring efforts, including the Pacific Flyway Shorebird Survey and the Intermountain West Shorebird Survey, we see every year how heavily migratory birds rely on the Salton Sea, especially in wetland areas. As lake levels continue to decline, with limited water available for new projects in this region, I think it's really critical that the water that we do have is directed toward the most effective multi-benefit solutions. And in my opinion, wetlands are one of the highest value uses of water at the sea because they support migratory birds. They reduce dust for public health mitigation, and they can also create enjoyable spaces for nearby communities when public access is also prioritized and included in project design. There is a strong community interest in seeing the North Lake pilot project move forward, and we appreciate the Salton Sea Authority and its partners exploring wetland-oriented designs that can deliver these benefits. What will be most helpful now, in my opinion, is clarity on clear next steps, timelines, and how remaining Prop 68 funds will be applied so that the project can advance in a coordinated and achievable way. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. And at this point in time, it was ladies first. We are now moving on to Iron Dad. You are next. I also did it in the order they gave them to me. So,
All right. I am Iron Dad. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. And, I got to say, this is really awesome to see this attendance, not only from the people out here in the audience, you can see a lot of local faces, probably faces you recognize, but also from the board. To see the entire board here showing up for the local communities is just, it's really heartening, and it gives us hope that we're going to come to good outcomes here. Speaking of outcomes, I just want to give my perspective about the operations and the priorities of this board, as well as all other agencies that are working on Salton Sea restoration. I don't think that's the best word, but restoration efforts. I just like to point out that when we're looking at the benefit to the local communities, we have to look at the overall outcomes. And I really hope that we can work towards the best outcomes. That means understanding in a serious way, all our liabilities in terms of ecological situations, certain ecological situations, all of our assets as well, because we have a lot of great things in this area. And to devote the funds in the most impactful ways. And in particular, if we're looking at health outcomes, look at the bang for the buck on doing these mitigations on the sea. They're expensive, and studies are coming out. You see Riverside has done, some very interesting studies showing that perhaps the bang for the buck is not particularly high there. If you look at health outcomes for the communities, I think we should start asking, what can we do for the communities? Wetlands that have public access are really great projects that benefit the local communities. North Shore Lake is a great project that can benefit local communities and promote public health here with better health outcomes. There are other potential projects. And I just want to make sure that we're looking at the whole picture here when we're looking at the long-term vision for the sea and not rule out, initiatives that can ultimately lead to better outcomes than what we're working on right now. And I'll just leave it at this. I'm not sure that the metrics that we're currently working towards, in particular the SSMP, which I've already expressed to Joe privately, are the right metrics for the best health outcomes to the local communities. And I think we may need to reassess this. And I really appreciate Patrick's efforts in pushing forward the feasibility study, which is looking at the entire situation here, considering the locals and building a long-term vision, which I believe is absolutely necessary in moving forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I believe I have one more. You're up. Yes, you are next. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mine will be Claire.
Miss Sinclair. Thank you.
My name is Larissa Sinclair, and I'm a resident of North Shore, formerly also Bombay Beach babe. So we have connections to both communities. And a couple weeks ago, there was some interesting chatter on two community chats. I just wanted to read to give insight to what the community is talking about. Okay, first one. Does anyone feel the smell of propane or a dead carcass is filling the streets? Next person, I literally almost called upstairs at the ski because someone said a toilet overflowed and I believed them. Haha. It's wafting through my windows, nasty. Smelling it at the ski as of like 10 or 15 minutes ago. Oh, weird. So it's not just me. It was one. Sulfur, it's going to get far worse. This is from Kevin Key, who is apparently a scientist. It's going to get far worse the more algae blooms we get. So scientists have determined that the Salton Sea exposed playa only contributes about 10% to the dust problem. But we have a far, far worse problem, noxious fumes. Fumes are way harder to avoid than dust. Then someone said, for anyone that's been around for quite a while, this is not new. This is something we used to smell all the time, at least once a year. And then someone else said, I've smelled it off and on since I've been here last year too. Huh, interesting. So nothing to be worried about, I guess. I've never smelled this in my 6 years here. Then in a separate chat, same question was asked and someone's like, yes, we smell it. Oh, I thought it might have been local to one small area. I wonder if it's something we should be worried about. Smelling it at the ski too. It was pretty rough. Does it have anything to do with the mud puddles around town? Most of them are on 3rd by the fire department. Smelled it up at C and 5th as well. Iron Dad, was it the sea? When I was running along the West Shore last week, it smelled awful, like poop emoji. Anyways, that's what the community is dealing with and what we're talking about. So this is just, it's becoming clear that the quality of the water is just as important as these dust suppression and mitigation projects. And we just want to know that we're safe and we don't have to worry about anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment online, Lisa? Not this time. Thank you.
It's a drum roll first.
Do we have any board member comments? Oh. Okay,
Do have one public comment online from Mark.
okay, Mark, you're up. See if we can hear you. And if you're talking, Mark, I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I really appreciate everything that the Salton Sea Authority is doing. I just really would emphasize that this is an opportunity to really do what the state of California promised to do in the QSA agreement. They promised they were committed to restoring the Salton Sea. And after the mitigation water ended in 2018, the sea has drastically gotten worse. And I'm just hoping that the Desert Shores project, that would be a small project that would show some really goodwill towards the community. We can at least restore a small area there where people can see what it used to look like and build on that. And I thank you for everything you're doing, but we just need to do so much more. And I just hope the Salton Sea Authority can use their influence to advocate and get the state and the federal government involved to get the funds needed. Studies are great. We've got a study that was completed. Now we just need to get a project done at the Desert Shores. And again, I thank you for everything you have done. The species conservation habitat project, that is awesome, but let's please get Desert Shores done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael Cohen.
Hey, Michael, you're up.
Thanks,
Maybe.
Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So just actually a question. Will there be an opportunity to comment on the individual agenda items, or should I speak?
Yeah, Michael, you sound a little bit actually like you have a cold. So can you speak a little louder?
Sorry, that's just the default. Is there an opportunity to speak on the individual agenda items, particularly the North Lake pilot project, or should I give my public comment now?
I actually did not understand that. No.
We'll allow public comment on each agenda item.
Oh, yes, we will allow public comment on each agenda item. Sorry.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I assume he'll speak later again.
You can speak now.
More comments.
Yeah, and he wants probably on that specific agenda item. Do we have any board member comments? Well, I do. Adorable. Yes, I will be writing back to Sophia Gaspar. She wrote to all of our board members. She's a 14-year-old girl and she's got some ideas on how to save the Salton Sea. And I appreciate her letter and I would encourage all of us to write back too. So I think that's a fabulous letter. So thank you for writing us.
Sure.
Mhm.
Want me?
Yes. Are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for being here. There we go. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm not sure how far you might be coming from, but regardless, welcome to North Shore if you're not from the immediate area. You know, we had the pleasure of doing a grand opening here at this fire station. I want to say maybe a year ago, maybe a little less. Well, it's been 2 years now. Time flies. It's been 2 years, and it's been 2 years in the making, in the sense of making sure that we also have consistent meetings here out in the North Shore area, whether it be here or the yacht club. But regarding this fire station, we're just very proud of the fact that our firefighters are here to ensure the safety of our folks, our residents within the immediate area. With that said, a lot of great ideas came up just now. Obviously ideas that we might have heard in the past, but also ideas that we need to be reminded of, as well as making sure that we continue to be consistent and be committed. And I know that this has been a long road, more than 30 years per se, for some, maybe 10, maybe for others, a year or 2 years. But nonetheless, the frustration is felt. And I feel it with you. I understand exactly what you are saying. Not only because I'm the supervisor, but because also I am from the area. Born and raised in the area and have seen what we had before and what we have now, and the situation, how it's become. You know, I will say that for a while, we had quite a bit of momentum moving forward with great ideas, specifically, in my case, really the North Lake pilot project. And as well, obviously, you heard just now about Desert Shores and other projects, the wetlands, and especially in Imperial County. But for me, what was the most important was the North Lake pilot project and the surrounding area. And then, unfortunately, you know, we lost some momentum. I think we lost momentum when we heard some bad news coming from the state, coming from a study. And it really, I guess you could say, deflated us. It really deflated me. Let me just put it to that way. I just felt like we were just going in circles. And you might feel the same way now, that nothing's getting done. And not enough things that we can point to. But I will say, though, that I feel after more conversations that have taken place within the last couple of months now, you know, I feel pretty good about where we're going. And I'm going to let others speak to that as we get into the agenda items, and I'll definitely chime in. But know this, though, as a county supervisor and obviously with staff here, and I want to thank staff Juan Perez. I'm not sure who else we have here, but we have other staff that are here from the county of Riverside. I want to thank you for committing, for being consistent. We have, I think, Doug that's back there as well, and others that potentially are not here to really push this along. And even to the point where we had to somewhat put our foot down to the state of California and say, look, it's time. It's time that we demonstrate to the people that we're for real here. And although there may be projects that are happening, they're not aware of the projects. And most of those projects, for the most part, are in Imperial County. But people should know also in Riverside County what's going on in Imperial County. Why not? And then what advancements have we done here? And why did we put a pause in the North Lake pilot project as a result of a study that just came out? That information needs to be stated out loud, and you need to be aware of that. You need to be informed of that information. Obviously, it'll be helpful in us trying to figure out as not only as a Salton Sea authority, but as a community that care about the Salton Sea. And what I mean by that is our residents, our nonprofit organizations, folks that love this area, and obviously policymakers, nonprofits, that we come together and we think through what are the best case scenarios. Now, I heard earlier, I want to call you the $1 million man, but you're not the $1 million man. You call yourself the Iron Man.
Iron Dad.
The Iron Dad, right? Okay. I remember Steve Austin from back in the day. I don't know if anyone remembers that. But the Iron Man, and you jog around the lake quite often. And obviously, you brought up some points that were well taken. And I think that the thought about, you know, listening to the community and ensuring that ultimately it's not just initiatives, if you will, that are coming from the state or from policymakers. In other words, from the top down. These ideas need to come from the bottom up. And we do have quite a bit of information and ideas that have come from the bottom up. You know, I'm actually surprised that Alianza is not here. I'm not sure if anyone from, okay, you're Alianza, okay. I just didn't see, I'm sorry. I just didn't see Sylvia and maybe someone else that I was expecting, but thank you for being here. They've been doing quite a bit of efforts and research and gathering information as to what they would like to see. And I hope that they express that even more so, because I am in full agreement with what it is that they're asking for. You know, besides trails, they have other ideas as well. And just know, though, that, you know, these concepts, these thoughts that we have are not strictly coming from this table, this dais. They are coming from the community at large. And once again, you know, our staff, I really appreciate the work that they've done because they've been committed to this, even though when at times I felt like walking away, to be honest with you. But not anymore. And I look forward to the feasibility study because I think that through that feasibility study, once that's completed, then we can go ahead and move forward with the efforts of the Army Corps of Engineers helping us and move along, move forward, advance the work that we see fit as a community. And so I think that will bring quite a bit, but we need to get through that. And I think Joe Shea will speak to that a little later. For the meanwhile, I think that's enough for me. You've heard enough from me this morning, but I just want to say thank you very much for being here. And I look forward to working with all of you.
Do I have any other board comments? If there are no other comments, can we move on to consent calendar? Does anybody have anything they want to discuss?
I have no discussion, but if there is no discussion, I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on, since,
It's so much easier when everybody's here in person.
oh my gosh, I love it instead of roll call vote. We are now moving on to the Imperial Stream Salton Sea feasibility study project update. So exciting. Who's presenting?
Hi, that would be me, Corey Stetzel from the Army Corps of Engineers.
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Corey. Go ahead.
Okay.
It doesn't work very well.
That mic does not like you, sir.
Let me share my screen one moment.
It sounds good. I think.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. I'm trying to get in slideshow presentation. There we go.
Well, that's better.
Great. So good morning. My name is Corey Stetzel. I'm a water resources planner with the Army Corps of Engineers. My colleague Susie Ming is also on the line. She's the project manager for the Imperial Stream and Salton Sea Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Feasibility Study. And we have a brief presentation for you today, and it's going to be a little bit of a refresher of some things we've already talked about, but we'll touch on also our study progress and our upcoming public meetings that are focused solely on the feasibility study. So first and foremost, what is the purpose of this study? In core terminology, this is an aquatic ecosystem restoration study. And we have a quote here from our regulation that provides the direction for the overall study. And our direction is to restore degraded ecosystem structure, function, and dynamic processes to a more natural and less degraded condition. I think this is important because we're not trying to restore to the sea to a historical condition or a pristine condition, simply a more natural and less degraded condition. We at the Army Corps of Engineers have heard the urgent need for action at the Salton Sea. We understand the ecological collapse of the lake and the threats posed by the exposed emissive playa that affects human health. So we've heard those messages loud and clear. And our goal ultimately of this study is to recommend a plan to Congress that is in the federal interest that will address the problems of the sea. And what does it mean to be in the federal interest? It means that we will demonstrate that the benefits from any recommended project will outweigh the costs. And all of our analyses that we'll conduct intend to quantify those project benefits and demonstrate that they do in fact outweigh project costs. How is this study different than previous studies? I want to highlight that this is not an academic study. We're not collecting data for scientific purposes. An Army Corps feasibility study is really a vehicle to federal funding for project implementation. So once we develop that recommendation to Congress and they authorize it and fund it. There'll be federal funding up to 65% of the project cost. This study is building upon all the previously conducted studies. We're assuming that the Salton Sea Management Program's 10-year plan projects will be finished. They will be part of our future without project condition, and all of the alternatives that we evaluate will be designed to work in tandem with those projects. We have adopted the Salton Sea Management Program's long-range plan alternatives, and we're evaluating those in our studies. So we're using all of the existing information. We're actually very thankful for all of the work that's been done to date. It's helped us a lot. We've also reviewed the public input that was submitted on the long-range plan as well. Okay, some notes on our study timeline and budget. We did have a longer than expected scoping period for this study, and I think that's really due to the fact that it's such a unique landscape, a large geographic scale, and just the complexity of all of the problems that are at the Salton Sea. We achieved our internal milestone, the alternatives milestone, back in August 2023. And then it took another 12 to 15 months to acquire the approvals for our funding request. So we did request above the standard $3 million, that is the standard feasibility study limit. We were approved for a total of $22.5 million to evaluate the alternatives and identify a recommended plan. We're currently in the alternative evaluation and analysis section of the study. And we will have a few touch points for public involvement. Today, of course, we are here to answer questions. We will be participating in the Salton Sea Management Program's end of year engagement meetings. And then we do intend to hold a feasibility study specific public meeting early in 2026. So I'm not totally sure if that's going to be January or February, but early in 2026, we'll have a public meeting and we'll send out notifications about that. Okay, so what have we been doing in addition to scoping the study? We did have a future hydrology workshop back in March of 2024, where we gathered a lot of local experts to help us better understand how water moves through the watershed so we can inform our models. Our hydrology and hydraulics team has been working on some models. I will say we considered using a variety of different existing models, but ultimately we decided to build our own hydrology model in-house. And for the technical folks, we're using the HEC HMS model for our hydrology model. And we're approaching completion of building that model, and we'll be running some future hydrology scenarios soon. In fact, we might hold another miniature workshop to get those technical experts to help us select a range of inflow scenarios to feed our models. And we also had approval in our internal processes to use the Audubon Society's ecological model that they have developed for the Salton Sea. And so we'll use that ecological model to quantify habitat that would be created from the alternatives. And we have a special bonus. We have a teammate who is pursuing her PhD, and she is going to be developing a water quality parameter to add on to that Audubon ecological model. One of our biggest efforts lately has been a screening exercise of our initial array of alternatives. As I mentioned earlier, we adopted all of the alternatives from the long-range plan. We also are creating an Army Corps alternative, which is alternative 14, the natural habitat succession and tributary restoration. So we've been working to compare and contrast these alternatives, and we're using a range of evaluation criteria such as effectiveness, or how well the alternative meets the study objectives, cost efficiency, acceptability, which has a specific definition in Army Corps regulation, and also duration to achieve restoration benefits. So we are racking and stacking these alternatives and giving them scores based on these criteria. And that is at our next public meeting in early 2026, we plan to announce the results of this screening exercise. At that point, we will tell you which alternatives have been screened and which alternatives will move forward into the final array for further evaluation. Yes, and as I mentioned,
6 foot what?
the next, oh, sorry. The next feasibility study public meeting has not yet been scheduled. We're targeting early 2026, and we'll be in the area. The study team will come and be in person, and we'll provide those study updates. We'll talk about the alternative screening and the final array of alternatives. And we'll also have our engineering team present on our hydrology and hydraulics modeling analyses. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you.
Thank you. We do appreciate that report. And so mid-2026 then, is that correct, when you will shorten those array of options, right? Is that what you said? That's when you'll come with really what? Early.
Yeah,
Okay.
hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully still in the winter or very early spring. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So it'll be whittled down to a small number for
Right.
detailed analysis. And then by October of 27 is when the tentatively selected plan per schedule should be chosen. Is that right, Corey?
That's correct, Patrick. Yes.
Yeah.
And I just want to say one thing Corey didn't show is the organizational chart of all the people from the Corps that's involved with this effort. I mean, there's at least 20 people with different disciplines and backgrounds working on advancing this work. And it's been it's been a challenging effort because there's, just like we'll talk about later with the North Shore and Desert Shores, this is a highly complex environment and an area that the Corps has not typically worked in. They usually deal in harbors and, bridges and not agricultural drainage sumps. So trying to understand it as an ecological system and creating something that's sustainable has taken us quite a while, but I think we've made enormous progress. And I'm personally looking forward to that February meeting and inviting the public to understand where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. Couldn't have done it without Yvonne and the state team. It's a great partnership between the DWR, the Salton Sea Authority, our federal advocates, Lisa and Lowry back in DC, all of the technical people at the state. But and it's unfortunate that a lot of this necessarily happens behind the scene because people are working hard to advance it. But it's a privilege to be able to come before the community and provide a little bit of update. So,
Madam Chair, I have some quick comments, if I may.
Please do.
Yeah, just I also want to bring recognition to Torres Martinez and them back in 2020 providing personal testimony in Washington, D.C. regarding the importance of this tributary study. So one of the reasons why we're here today is because we were successful in providing that personal testimony on the Hill. So special thanks to Torres Martinez and their participation in this. Also just kind of wanted to make some general inquiries, and I apologize if I missed this in regards to where the finish line is as it pertains to the chief's report. So my understanding is that there is some milestone discussions that will take place in February, but if I can maybe from a Gantt chart perspective understand when and how will we get to a chief's report so that we can lock in the 65% federal funding partner to get this project and start putting shovels in the ground?
Yes, right now, Susie, I know you're on the line. The chief's report is scheduled for the end of the calendar year in 2029, which I understand is a long ways away. And we have been encouraged to look for ways to accelerate if possible, and we will work with that in mind and see where and how we can accelerate.
And the reason we target that is because the projects that will be constructed out of this this plan will likely be funded through the Water Resources Development Act, which occurs every 2 years. So 2030 is a word of cycle. So by completing it by 29, it should allow us to be in application for federal funding that time.
Got it. There was some reference, if I may, Madam Chair, one follow-up question. So there was some reference into the SSMP. So can I just maybe get an understanding on how this tributary study will align with some of the milestones in reference to SSMP and you know, how that works? And are we having discussions with our great partners at CNRA as far as ensuring that our tributary study and the possible project that we're exploring does have alignment with SSMP?
Well, we're working
Great.
closely with the state, and they're, you know, keeping us up to date on their progress and on their future projects as well. And we're going to incorporate all of those designs into our overall design, right? So we're going to need to understand how much, you know, water use each SSMP project uses and how that would affect our project on a larger scale. So it's very important that we understand that well and account for it in our modeling.
Yeah, and I, would just first note a huge thanks to Corey and Susie and the rest of the Army Corps team for just an incredible amount of effort over the last couple years to advance this process, as well as Yvonne from our Department of Water Resources team, because there's a lot of coordination that rightfully needs to happen to make sure that the Army Corps is coming in, or the projects that are advanced through this process are coming in and complementing our state projects. And I do believe that we're on that trajectory. And with continued coordination, we will expand, our partnership and be able to deliver this. As I think, folks know from the Water Board order that governs our program at the state, it talked about the fact that the Salton Sea is such a large body of water. We can't go at this alone just from the state. We need that federal partnership. And because of the Army Corps' efforts, because of Corey and Susie and the rest of their team, I think every time we have a meeting, it's pushing 100 people on the Zoom call, right? So they've got a lot of folks who are thinking really critically about all of this work. And I'm proud to say that our team has learned just so much about what it takes to build projects over the last 2 to 3 years. And we've been able to transfer those lessons learned to the Army Corps team as they're doing all of this work. Just the last thing I would say too, because we have such great turnout at this meeting, the Army Corps is obviously working through some really dense subject matter, and screening it, putting it through their process and really giving it a lot of deliberation. But I want to make sure that there are enough public touch points with members of the community so that they can engage, ask questions, and understand more about what this process is, because it is a game changer and we can't go about the next phase of our work at the Salton Sea without it. So to the extent that folks online have questions or suggestions or recommendations for how we can continue to, just as a team, get that information to you, if you're in this meeting, please come up to me afterwards or reach out to us over email, because we want to make sure that we're providing enough time to make sure those questions are answered. And I just want to again appreciate Corey and Susie and the rest of their team for being here today to talk a little bit more about this effort and why it's so important.
Madam Chair, my final question is in regards to the ultimate goal behind the feasibility study and the project, that the touch points. I'm assuming that the touch points would involve creating a project that addresses public health, restoration of habitat and recreation. Is that ultimately the finish line that we're pursuing here, that we look at those three North Stars in this constellation of stars as how we address the Salton Sea in a project that's sustainable?
You want it, Corey?
Yeah, I'll respond. Yeah, those are our three study objectives, really. And I apologize, I didn't have the study objectives on a slide for you. But our objectives are to create habitat, to address exposed emissive playa, and to create recreation. So we are working towards all three of those goals.
It's good. Just wanted to hear that on the record.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yeah,
Just-
there you go.
Okay, just very quickly, I appreciate the points that were made, especially from Joe regarding the public. If you could, you know, if you have a burning question of sorts, and maybe a few, if you don't mind just writing them down and make sure you give them to us, specifically Patrick, so that we can follow up. And then we can go ahead and direct them to either the state or Army Corps of Engineers and get that response for you in preparation for the next meeting. I think that's going to be important. So just wanted to reiterate that once again, but I think it's really important that you raise your questions now, although we can't do it in this format, but at least raise it in a format of writing it down on paper, and then we'll get back to you in writing. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Any other comments? Any other questions?
Do you have one public comment from, I think it's Tom Sefton.
Okay. Okay, Tom. I bet you're online.
You can have unmute. You can have mute.
We're working on it, Tom.
1 second.
Thank you. Appreciate the unmute. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Great. Two questions. One for Corey. One is the quality of the water in the larger body of the Salton Sea. And we've heard about the concerns that the community is raising about that and how it impacts the rapidly changing biology in that body of water and how it impacts microorganisms and the impacts that that's having on people in that body of water. Does that fit under either any of the objectives? Does that fit under restoring habitat, or does that fit under recreational use objective? Where does that fit? And the other question is, you did have ocean water import and Mexico water exchange as some of the things that came out of the long range plan being considered. Are those two based solely on the proposals from Brent Haddad at UC Santa Cruz, or are other more feasible options also being considered? Thank you.
Great questions. On the water quality piece, that's a tough area for the Army Corps of Engineers, because we don't normally work in water quality. That falls under the authority of the Environmental Protection Agency. But of course, it's really important here and we can't ignore it. So we are assessing it to the extent that we can, and trying to understand how it does affect habitat. And I think that would be the main way that we analyze and think about water quality, is how it affects habitat. But it's not directly part of our Army Corps of Engineers mission, unfortunately. So we won't be formulating for that parameter specifically. And on the ocean water import and the water transfer question, yes, we are relying on the long range plan and the independent review panel information, and which we feel like is appropriate for this level of the feasibility study because our alternatives at this point in time are relatively conceptual. I think it's appropriate to group similar concepts together instead of having multiple variations of each type of alternative. That would just bog us down and slow us down if we had too many variations. So yes, we are adopting the information from the long range plan and the independent review panel.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Unfortunate, since those were designed to fail by UC Santa Cruz.
Thanks, Tom. Madam President, I noticed we have one more person wishing to speak online, and I think as a member of the public, if I want something is really going on here.
That's next to the computer.
There it is. Something over here is radioactive, I promise.
Radioactive.
But I think Jasmine Phillips is online, and I think Iron Dad wanted to make some comments, but I wanted to note the time and.
Yeah, just very quickly, Madam Chair, if I may. So I heard him mention or ask a question about Mexico. And I think maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe he was referring to the C2C concept.
Correct.
And I think he's wondering if that's still part of the study or not, or moving forward. I think we need to state out loud where we're going with that, if we are or we're not, because we need to put that to rest if we're not, and state the reasons why, or state the reasons that we are, and obviously let people know that that is something that we're working on with Mexico, if that's the case, which it's a pretty difficult type of effort, if you ask me, but nonetheless, though, maybe there are people that can make that work. I'm not exactly sure, but I think we need to answer that question.
So the purpose of the meeting in the first quarter of next year is to identify the plans that will be moving forward. I think that there's been plenty of discussion about the seawater importation strategy.
He's asking right now, though, Patrick. There's been, but
it has not been formally eliminated, but I think that the state, the Corps, and all people working on the project understand the complexities and the timeline associated with implementing that plan. And I would also suggest that whatever moves forward in the core planning process, if third parties or others want to advance a separate concept that will work, nothing precludes that from happening. And I know there are discussions, and I'm, separately having conversations to evaluate the efficacy and reasonableness of how those might get done. But I know the Corps has certain constraints and parameters as to how they score and underwrite and implement projects. And I think that it's challenged in that respect. But it'll be formally dealt with at our meeting in the first quarter next year.
And that's fine. I just think it's important that people hear that.
That's right.
And that, when we come back, obviously we'll raise it again with more answers.
I think broadly, both the state and the authority recognize the need for public participation, involvement, and education all along the way, so that when we get to the tentatively selected plan, they understand why it's this plan and not that plan. It's the only way it's going to get done.
Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
Hey, thank you for hosting this at the fire station. It's really nice. I like the doors. And it's good to be in attendance in North Shore. So in regards to the long range planning, I'd ask that at the next meeting, if there's going to be some more follow-up in regards to what the viability or other conversations that are happening on C2C, either from the Pacific or the Sea of Cortez, that we get some information about what's happening in Arizona. And what's been reported that Arizona is seeking importation of water at Hermosillo, and I would like to know how they've jumped into that conversation and if it's serious, because we've been talking about it for 20 years. If that's happening, then it shows another possibility.
Well, definitely. We need to bring that back. We need to have a discussion. Thank you. Also, if there isn't further board comment, Eric Reyes has a comment he would like to make on this item.
Make sure he stays under 3 minutes.
Yeah,
All right.
Eric Reyes, Amigos de Comida. So yeah, Ryan hit on a good point. Arizona is actively searching that. We've been watching
Eric,
that very closely.
You don't need to get so close to the mic.
Okay.
You're blowing us out.
And second, San Diego County Water Authority had started a feasibility study from Borrego to Burrow underneath at the closest point that they could get into their water for water that they are buying from IID, obviously. So that was at the time when I met with them and discussed it. And I'm saying, why can't we also then co-burrow together to bring water from the sea? That's an option that we need to consider. If San Diego County Water Authority thought it was feasible at the time, they would actually save them money than paying their wheeling fees to Metropolitan. Why can't they think we do that? Mexico is a whole different entity that would require a lot of prolonged negotiations and concessions and other things that maybe the United States would not want to do, which it would consider the whole border issues. I used to be on the International Boundary Water Commission, so I know it's not just one issue, it's all tied together. So I think that should also be brought back up. San Diego County Water Authority was looking at it as a possibility. I don't see why we can't. Thank you.
Thank you.
As the gentleman said, restoration has to go out of the conversation if you do not bring in new water. Thank you.
Thank you. And then unofficially, do I bring Iron Dad back up? I believe he has a question too. We'll say this, your previous speaker forum works.
All right, so I'm probably not the only one in the audience who really it kind of piqued my attention when I heard the year 2029. It's hard to hear. After so many delays, that's very difficult to hear that we're talking about 4 years away for this feasibility study to be complete. That said, this situation that we have here is actually unique. It's probably the only situation like this in the world. And I understand this is going to take a lot of information gathering to make the best decisions. One question I have is, does the feasibility study hold up progress in any way on the 10-year plans? So to be clear, this is happening in parallel with all other efforts and not holding up progress on any other plans.
Addition by addition. Yeah, there's plenty of work to do at the sea. We're doing our work now. We're going to continue doing our work for long into the future. And we're coordinating with the Army Corps so that they're adding, value above and beyond that because the Salton Sea needs it.
Excellent. Well, that's really good to hear. And the other thing that I wanted to make a comment. When we're talking about these projects, oftentimes we talk about the money and we talk about the outcomes in terms of, oftentimes acreage mitigated. What I'd like to just point out here is cost isn't just about money. There are costs to any delays that we have on these projects in terms of the health of the local communities, for the degradation of the ecological environment, for all kinds of wildlife. And what I'd like to really stress is when we're considering the costs of decisions, that we take into account the amount of time lost and that we really start thinking about how we get these projects done. Thank you so much.
And again, in the interest of time, moving stuff forward, we do have a full agenda. Are we good? Do we want to say thank you, Corey and Susie, for presenting? Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. We are going to now move on because I changed it all up. Project updates. North Lake demonstration pilot.
We do have 3 people online who have indicated a desire.
They want Pardon?
There are 3 people online who've indicated a desire to speak. I would note that, that this was intended as a brief introduction and presentation, and that we are going to have a robust public discussion of this at the first of the year. So if you do receive comments, I would ask they be very brief.
Okay.
Listen, paying attention.
Let's go ahead. We will briefly, who do we have first? Oh, Jasmine.
Thank you. I have a brief comment and question for Corey. I'm looking for clarification on the timeline, specifically in regards to the early implementation increment or the early start projects that were considered when this study was being revamped. So I believe it's projects that would be taking place, shovel-ready projects that would be identified or taking place before the conclusion of the study. So a little bit elaboration on that, just to know that there is something that we will see on the ground before the completion of the study. Yes or no? Thank you.
Susie, can you help me with that one as the keeper of the schedule? Can y'all make it so Susie can speak? She's no longer on the panel on the Zoom call.
I didn't really. Oh.
As I have a moment to think, actually, I'm remembering that we were targeting WRDA 2028 for the early implementation increment. So, because as Patrick mentioned, the WRDA Water Resource Development Acts come every 2 years. So in theory, that early implementation increment would be finished in late 2027, early 2028.
Yeah, thanks so much, Corey. I don't know if you can hear me, so I think I got unmuted, so appreciate that. Yes, we are trying to incorporate all the, as you said, the 10-year plan projects and into our basin-wide study. So we are looking at all those projects and incorporating them. As Patrick was saying earlier, we are trying to push so that we can make the Water Resource Development Acts, which happen every 2 years. That helps us get into the queue for implementation. So those are just important pieces that we as a team are very cognizant of and working through our core process, feasibility process, in order to meet those milestones.
If I could comment briefly on that.
Sure.
Microphone doesn't. It's a new year, it's a new administration, and it's a new set of priorities and rules and guidelines and rules of the road. The early increment process was part of an agreement that is signed and is in place that hasn't been altered. But it is anticipated that discussions are taking place that can we complete the entire process faster if the early increment process project is rolled up into the project as a whole and allow us to get it. It doesn't stop the state's work on the 10-year plan, and it doesn't stop projects being advanced at the sea. So I think as it relates to projects happening on the ground, I don't see any real timing in that. But that's the work that the authority and our team is doing back in DC, working with our delegation, working with the Corps, working with the Bureau to keep pushing this thing forward. It's a dynamic process. It's an enormous amount of work. But in full transparency, I just wanted to make sure that people were aware that there is a new administration with different priorities that is still focused on the comprehensive ecosystem restoration plan, which is really most critical to all of us.
Thank you. Another public comment?
President, we have 2 people online who only have their first names. So I don't really know who they are, who have indicated an interest to speak. One is Mark and one is Janet. If you'd like to receive comments from Mark and Janet, we can set.
If they keep it brief.
Keep it brief. Mark?
And state their last name for the record.
Janet, you've been unmuted.
Hi, this is Janet Wilson. I'm an independent reporter. Many of you know me from my past work at the Desert Sun and USA Today. Some of my questions have been answered partially, but I think the main thing I want to ask is for the ordinary person, why is this going to take so long when there have been so many efforts, as somebody alluded to, over the decades, including by the Army Corps decades ago? So why can't a full plan be ready by the end of 27 for possible implementation or passage in 2028? I recognize that's a devil's advocate question, but I think it is the topmost question on folks' minds. So if you could just explain a little better why it's going to take so long. Maybe it's necessary slow walking because, as Patrick alluded to, the change in administrations, whatever it is, what's going on here that it can't be done sooner after so long? Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
This is
Susie, you're
Susan
on.
Ling. Yeah, I'm on. Thank you so much for the question. I'll encourage you, Janet, to reach out to our team. We'd be happy to have a much more in-depth discussion about our feasibility process. And it does, I know it might seem like those blocks seem like they're not specific, but there is a lot going on in between our analysis and our modeling in order to determine the final array. We are obviously that is a realistic schedule per se, but it does have contingency built into it. So we have to build in the risks that we ascertain may occur. So it is possible our schedule would be shorter, but we have to build that into our schedule. But as I said, to keep it short, I'm happy to have a much further discussion about the feasibility process and its components. Thank you.
And if I can say, we're going to get to 2029 through 2027. That's the real deadline. If we have a tentatively selective plan in October of 2027, then we'll know where we're going with this. And I think that will be very instructive. But it is a very complicated process, and I appreciate Susie's response.
Okay, last public comment before moving on, which I believe is Mark.
Hello, hello, this is Mark Adams. I spoke earlier and I just wanted to comment on something else that was said. I'm a landowner, so I am a stakeholder in the area. And I would just like to remind everyone and also clarify, when we're looking at planning and considering alternatives, do we recognize what Gavin Newsom has said repeatedly, that California has the capacity to handle big problems by leveraging its innovation, resiliency, leadership, and technology and policy. And the Salton Sea is an opportunity to demonstrate what California can do. Yes, it's a big problem, but you know what? It's a huge opportunity. And if we can build a $130 billion bullet train, we can fix the Salton Sea. There just has to be a will. If there's a will, there's a way. And I'd like to ask the board, when you're looking at your planning, is that a premise that everyone is reminded of, or is that a consideration that we're always reminded of when we're looking at challenges? What Gavin Newsom says about California's ability to tackle big problems? Thank you.
I will just say I appreciate your glass half full and I love it. It's an opportunity. So thank you for those comments. Joe.
I was just going to say, Mark, as someone who worked for Gavin Newsom for almost 7 years and still work for him, he's kind of my forever boss because he appointed me to this job, but worked for him 7 years previously before this job. You're speaking my language. You're speaking our language. That's exactly right. That's what we talk about, every day. We got to do the big things. We got to push. This work is really hard because after all, it's the largest lake by landmass in the entire state. But obviously we can do a lot. We're doing a lot, and we're going to continue to scale up our work and do even more. So thanks for the words of encouragement.
Thank you. If there's no further comments, can we get on to our North Lake project update? Mics are hot.
So the North Lake project was funded through a Prop 68 grant in 2018. And the project, the funding, the $20 million was largely as a result of the Salton Sea Authority's efforts to secure money for the region Supervisor Perez, Representative Director Estrada went to Sacramento and really fought hard to bring that money here. We identified 4 separate parcels of land, recognized that the North Shore Yacht Club was an anchor to this community. And we, set about the business of trying to identify a project that was suitable for the area. We spent the last number of years trying to address this North Lake pilot demonstration project because there's so much that we did not know. We know a lot more now. And what Ivana is about to present and what the county is about to present is informed by what we have learned. And I'll turn it over.
All right, I'm going to say a few words first. Thank you, General Manager O'Dowd. Good morning, members of the board and members of the public. As General Manager O'Dowd mentioned, I'm here to present on something I think we can all agree on. We need to build the North Lake pilot project. I have a proposal for how I think we can do that. But first, I wanted to share a quick story. I know some of us have to leave at certain times, so I'll try to keep this extra quick. But about 3 years ago, before I started this job, I was part of a group of staffers in the governor's office trying to coordinate greater investment in the Salton Sea region from statewide philanthropy organizations. And as part of that effort, we organized a roundtable with philanthropy and Salton Sea community members so that they could speak directly to philanthropy about their needs. And I remember that one of the philanthropy representatives asked the community members about state funding. They asked them, what are you seeing from the state? What's the state funding around here? What's your interpretation of that, right? And the community members basically shrugged. They said, what state funding? And then one of them said something that I'll never forget, and I think about it every day. She said, we're so used to getting pennies, but I want what I know we are worth. And this is maybe 2 or 3 years ago. At that point, from the state, we weren't investing pennies. We were investing record levels of funding into this region. But what crystallized for me in that conversation is that if we're going to talk about honoring the worth of Salton Sea communities, it can't just come in the form of dollars, even though that's absolutely essential. It's also got to come in the form of meaningful engagement in the implementation of those dollars, or else, honestly, from the state's perspective, I fear we're not maximizing our full potential. Which brings me to the pilot project. This project may be one of the smallest at the sea by acreage, but there isn't a more important project in the entire Salton Sea. The project's proximity to the community of North Shore and the fact that the Salton Sea Authority and Riverside County have done so much good work to both advocate for recreational community benefits and gather critical information to inform final design are all reasons that we've got to leverage those efforts and get shovels in the ground. I should note that our state program is also building a habitat restoration project right next to the pilot project. It's called the North Lake Wetlands Project. The names get a little confusing, I know. But taken together, our combined work has the potential to significantly alter about 2,000 acres, or getting close to 2,000 acres on the north side of the Salton Sea. That's about 3 square miles, 4 times the size of Disneyland. It's the majority of landmass around the northern shoreline area of the Salton Sea. With that said, our team has gathered essential information to build our wetlands project over the past year. And we've encountered data that's required us to recognize that our initial project concept isn't feasible. I know the pilot project has encountered some of those same problems too, which, despite all of the hard work that's gone into advancing the project, have posed really big questions about what next steps need to look like. And I know a lot of folks are wondering, what is the future of the pilot project? I can tell you that in the state's case, we've had to pivot our North Lake Wetlands project to a different concept to ensure that our project is successful. And we've also learned a lot over the last 12 months or so about certain limits within our state project delivery processes and processes that we have to follow, internally to ensure that things get built. So on that topic, I want to invite my colleague Yvonne Wilhoff to talk a little bit more about the data and information that we've gathered in greater detail about our North Lake Wetlands project. And then I'll jump in at the end with a couple of observations and talk a little bit about what I think it could mean for building the pilot project. Yvonne?
How about now? Yeah, we're good? All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Yvonne Wilhoff, and I am the Assistant Deputy Director for Salton Sea Restoration at the California Department of Water Resources. And I'm here today to provide an update on the status of the Salton Sea Management Program's North Lake Wetlands Project. But before I dive into that, in case anyone's participating today that's not familiar with the state Salton Sea Management Program, it's comprised of 3 state agencies. It includes my department as well as the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and together our 2 departments work under the guidance and leadership of the California Natural Resources Agency. My department in particular is responsible, I'd say our primary role is to plan, permit, and to construct projects on behalf of the Salton Sea Management Program. So with that in mind, when we were looking at a project at the northern end of the sea, our original idea is that we wanted to do something similar to the Species Conservation Habitat Project that's located at the southern end of the sea. Similar to the SCH project, we wanted to construct a large-scale pond or ponds along the northern edge of the Salton Sea to create aquatic habitat for fish and birds. Like the SCH project, this project location is adjacent to a river and downstream from agricultural drains. So with this concept in mind, we moved forward with with steps to determine if this project concept is feasible, if we can build this. So we began by evaluating water supply availability. So we worked to compile all of the information that was readily available to us through plans, studies, data collection. Many of these waterways have gauges to monitor flows. Then we worked with the Coachella Valley Water District, and also aspects of this work was in coordination with the Salton Sea Authority and the County of Riverside to pull all of the water information that's available at this end of the sea. And what we had learned through this effort is that there's less water available than we had originally thought, and the options of water supply are less than we originally thought. So what does that mean? It means coming from the Whitewater River, the flows are not as consistent as we see at the southern end of the sea. We do have water coming through the agricultural drains, but it varies throughout the year, and some of those drains have very little to no flow in the summer months, and that there is a demand for water supply downstream from the emergent wetlands that are present. Another thing that we looked into is the availability of surface water, specifically from the Colorado River via the Coachella Valley Canal. And what we learned through looking into that water supply is, unfortunately, that source of water is not available for restoration projects, mostly due to water rights reasons. Then we looked at groundwater, and groundwater is interesting here because this project overlays the Indio Subbasin. And the Indio Subbasin is a groundwater basin that is highly managed under a groundwater management plan that's associated with the state's Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which means that we are limited in our ability to put in new wells because they're making sure that they can sustainably manage that aquifer. So we're really just left with agricultural flow from the drains and some water from the Whitewater River waterway that doubles as the Coachella Valley stormwater channel. Another effort that we worked on is working with landowners to secure temporary site access. And the reason why we need that is so that we can get our feet and eyes on the ground to evaluate site conditions to see if there's anything we need to know about this particular location that would either be a deal breaker or would result in a change in our design. So we worked with several landowners, many represented as part of the Salton Sea Authority Board, so thank you for working with us, and we were able to get out and conduct surveys. We conducted several types of surveys, but I'm going to focus on the ones that influenced our concept changing. One is that we conducted field work to develop an aquatic delineation report. And as part of this effort, we were able to map out the emergent wetlands downstream of the agricultural drains at the northern end of the sea, east of the Whitewater River. And once we had those areas mapped out, we were curious to know, is there any species of concern within these wetlands that would be influential in how we would move forward with our project? Working with our colleagues at the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and their biologists, we conducted marsh bird surveys and pupfish surveys. Through the marsh bird surveys, we were able to determine that some of these wetlands at the northern end of the sea have the presence of Yuma Ridgeway rails and black rails. Through our pupfish surveys, we determined that pupfish are present in the drains. And that's an endangered species. I don't know if I mentioned that. So then what we're working on right now is going out and conducting field work to determine if there's pupfish present within the wetlands themselves. And we do know, at least in one scenario, that we have found pupfish at least in one of the wetlands. So from a biological did I cut out? Okay, so from a biological perspective, we do have limitations around endangered species at the northern end of the sea. So what you're seeing on your screen right now is the boundary of the North Lake project as originally conceptualized. It's that long, skinny black boundary, the bigger one at the north end of the sea. And for just as a point of reference, the boundary on the east side, that's a little bit smaller, is the boundary of the North Lake Pilot Demonstration Project. But focusing on the bigger boundary, what I hope you can see on this slide is that a portion of the project location is still inundated with water. And of the area that is exposed, a notable amount is covered by the emergent wetlands, which is reflected in green within that project boundary. And then outside the boundary, the wetlands are in purple, if you can see color. So given all of this new information that we gathered, we updated our project concept to work with the conditions we have in this particular location of the sea. So we moved our project boundary up elevation to the area that's exposed, and we're capturing the wetlands, most of the wetlands east of the Whitewater River. The project goals now are to protect these wetlands so that they do not degrade as the sea recedes, to encourage vegetation growth between the wetlands, so we have a dust suppression component as well, and then to layer in recreational opportunities. And I think Joe maybe get into this, so I'll gloss over that one in the sense that our funding allows us to work on things a little bit differently than we were able to in the past. So it's an exciting thing. And this project concept has a lighter touch on the landscape. It's working with what Mother Nature is giving us as far as the emergent wetlands and knowing that these wetlands support the species that our program is targeting when we're trying to restore habitat. And it also has a substantially less demand for water. This slide's very busy, so I'm hoping I can just hit the high level points. It's related to our timeline, where we are and where we're going. Right now, we're working on wrapping up surveys. Some of them are time bound in the calendar year, so we have to wait for a particular window of our annual surveys. So we're wrapping those up. We have sent out tribal notification letters, and we are in the process of receiving responses, and we are planning on setting up meetings with tribal governments and entities in the coming months to discuss this project. That's actually a very important step in our project development. We are working with landowners so we can get the access that we need to construct the project. And we're working on wrapping up the contract template so we can go out for a request for qualifications, requests for proposals. Right now, we're on schedule to go out for that RFQ, RFP, the proposal process in June of 2026. And our hope and our intent is that we have a contractor on board and the design initiated before the end of the calendar year of 2026, with construction beginning in 2027. And the intent of this slide is to give me an opportunity to talk about where I personally think there's some risk in this schedule, to be fully transparent. What you see on your screen here in the different colors, the colors represent different landowners, with the exception of the red. The red is a blanket category for private landowners. So when we are working to get access to construct a project, we need access to the physical project location outlined in black. And we also need to have access approved for roads that get us to that project site. And what you can observe here is there's a lot of red. And the last I checked, we will be working with 11 private landowners in addition to the landowners represented in different colors. So as a person who oversees projects, we evaluate risk associated with different aspects of a project. So from the schedule in particular, I would flag this as a potential risk for delay. So I just wanted to note that when we're looking at the schedule for this project. And that's it for me.
Can you DJ the next slides for me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Sure.
Great. We can do some music at the end. Okay, so I'm gonna just come back in with a couple reflections here. Next slide. So with all that said, our assessment of the pilot project concept is similar to our assessment for our own project that Yvonne was talking about before he pivoted, which is that there just isn't enough water available to sustain a larger body of water, particularly given the low summer flows and presence of endangered species that are dependent on current flows in the wetlands. My understanding is that last year there was some conversations about pilot project concept revisions that were informed by some annual flow estimates from the drains, but we didn't have the seasonal flow estimates, which are extremely limited in the hottest months. We also didn't have all the information on the presence of endangered species that we have now. And those are two operative things that we've learned over the last year that have led us to where we are now, which is that we've got to figure out how to advance both projects with less water. Next slide. So another reflection that I have on our program's ability is to take on critical project responsibility functions within the state that go beyond the design process, right? We've talked a lot about the pilot project design. I know folks here have been engaged in those conversations for a long time. That's even setting aside, a lot of permitting, contract management, construction management, land access, which Yvonne just talked about on the last slide, very complicated, and then also operations and maintenance. These are super dense, time-intensive tasks that are also essential to building a project, and they require, from the state's perspective, vertical coordination across state government in order to be successful. Our team is obviously capable of tapping its subject matter experts to advise on discrete project components. But what we've learned, again, primarily over the last year, is that our state project delivery infrastructure can only work as intended in full coordination when we're in charge of the entire project delivery. And on that topic too, we can go to the next slide, but I just want to shout out to the fact that, Yvonne was the project manager for our North Lake Wetlands project a couple years ago. She is obviously amazing at what she does. She's been since promoted like 3 times over within our program or something like that. And she's now in charge of all of the infrastructure delivery for our project at the Department of Water Resources. But her background at the SSMP is in the North Lake project. And we've got a fantastic new project manager who I think is about 6 weeks on the job, Steve Mitchell, who actually comes from the U.S. Army Corps and also understands very deeply how to build projects. And North Lake Wetlands is, his full-time job. And Yvonne's job managing the team, she has that background on the wetlands project. So again, I think within the capacity of our team and just how we've grown, we've got the expertise to get this thing done. And so that's one opportunity. A couple other things I just wanted to touch on is that despite the design and project responsibility, challenges, we've got full funding from the climate bond to advance the North Lake Wetland project. We're leveraging new permit streamlining pathways, and we're preparing to accept bids in mid-2026. And we're using a new contract delivery method that essentially integrates the design and construction process, which allows for continuous communication throughout the project. And we think this is going to be really crucial for advancing this project because it's going to allow us to adapt to the changing conditions at the sea. And then we've also done a ton of work listening to communities, which you can read about in our community needs report. So I think I've got 2 slides left. So let's go to the next slide. Just going to boil this down. So we have a better sense of water availability for both projects, which is historically the key design consideration that we have to overcome to build our state projects. We've also got our own project right next to the pilot project that's fully funded. It's ready to go out to bid in about 8 months, and our permitting team is working hard to make sure it's shovel ready. And then given the conditions that are, rapidly changing at the sea, we're employing a new project delivery method that integrates the design and construction processes, which will help us better respond to challenges like water availability. And we think it will help us better inform our outreach, both as we come back to SSA and give updates, and also as we continue to engage with community about the project. So here's our team's proposal for how we think we can get the North Lake Pilot Project done. Let us expand the scope of our state project, the North Lake Wetlands Project, to include construction of the North Lake Pilot Project area and invest the existing dollars for the pilot project into our state contract, focusing on, again, getting shovels in the ground in 2027. Next slide. So real quick, if we do this, we can leverage all of the benefits that I just talked about. And I think that's really important to consider. Let's go to the next slide, because I know we've got time crunch here. And so just the last thing I'd say is just a quick note on vision, because I'm talking about a project approach that would leverage flexibility to changing conditions. And obviously, we've got to adapt to less water and build the project and get it through design. In this case, we would focus on developing upfront criteria when we go out to bid that would seek to maximize the habitat in the existing lake area and then create new public access points near the sea via trails. This is what we've heard far and away from community members. Over 500 community members, reached out to us through our community needs report. Far and away, the thing that they expressed was a desire for more opportunities to interact with the sea through trails. And that's what we would seek to advance with this. And then we'd also try to seek to leverage, available water supplies to, again, maximize that habitat area and the existing lake area. So I'll close with this. The pilot project is called the pilot project for a reason. It sought to push the boundaries of what we could accomplish, and our efforts to build projects at the north side of the Salton Sea are better because of it. Thanks to the great work from Riverside County, SSA, and others to grapple with the inherent challenges of building at the sea, we've got a chance before us to advance a project that in many ways is the manifestation of Supervisor Perez's Assembly Bill 71 back in 2013, which rejected the false choice between habitat restoration and public recreation. It recognized that we can and we must do both. So I hope you will see this opportunity to do just that with this proposal. And I think I should pass it to the Rivco team. Do they have anything else?
Yeah, while Douglas is pulling his slides up, are you going to make comments? Juan, do you want to? Okay, Juan's going to be presenting, but this could not have happened without the authority secured the grant in 2018 and in 2020. The project was put together with Riverside County acting as implementing agency, and their hard work and their resources advanced this project where it's been today. And Juan Perez is going to be telling us about how we got from there to here.
Thank you, Patrick. And thank you, SSA board and members of the public that are here. I've got a few slides. I'm going to move through them pretty quickly because you're probably slided out at this point, but kind of get to some of the heart of the discussion and the things we've learned along the way. But I think it's important to just acknowledge how we got here. And can Lisa or Patrick, were you advancing this for us, or?
I think it's right here.
Okay, don't seem to be advancing, but
so you gotta click that.
Yeah,
I think you gotta click.
I gotta. Yes. No. I'm
See where we
sorry.
go. You're good. You just need-
Okay, hopefully, I pick it up from here. So just a note on the partnership. And again, thanks to the authority for your leadership. The county has been serving as your contractor. Why is that? Because Supervisor Perez really asked us to draw on our experience as a county team on delivering large projects that we've done many throughout the Coachella Valley and the entire county to advance this project. And I believe we've done that. And why am I involved? I'm the chief operating officer for the county. Normally, the executive office of the county does not get involved in these type of projects, but it was the importance and the priority that the supervisor gave it. And I want to acknowledge Pat Cooper, who is kind of the conscience of all things Salton Sea, for Supervisor Perez and team, who's steadfastly supporting / pushing us along the way through this effort. And my background is an engineer, so I love tackling big problems, and we've been tackling this together. So a little bit of where we started, kind of our North Star, certainly trying to maximize the area, recreational area along the North Shore, while also meeting all the other needs of the project, habitat, and other things tied to Prop 68 funding directly. Joe touched on the pilot demonstration project, so I'm not going to go into a lot of depth, other than to say that this was something unique, using a unique approach, and it was meant to inform how we move forward together. And I believe we very much have done that. We've learned so much through our studies on the ground, and I'll talk about them a little bit more here in a minute. And it's helped us to help define the path forward. And that path is different in some ways, and at the same time, it's more sustainable. And I think that's important, that whatever we do here as the state moves forward with this project, it's something that can be sustained over time. We'll not spend any time on the timeline in the interest of time, but I will note that part of our work did include looking at a number of alternative sites. And why is that? Certainly we wanted to, and our priority was right here along the North Shore. And at the same time, a lot of the work that we are doing, and it kind of gets to the point that Yvonne made, really just revolves around water. And where is the water source? Where are the water sources? And this has been a huge part of our effort to date that we've done is trying to look at the drain waters and map them out, because we know that is our primary water source, right? And we have this sort of internal challenge, if you will, conflict and balancing, if you will, that the water that has to remain going to the wetlands at the end of where the drains are, at the same time with the desire to maximize the area here at North Shore along the recreational area, right? And it's this push-pull, because the more water and the larger this lake ends up being here, the less water then there would be going to wetlands, and vice versa. And you can see in this exhibit, to even be close to the initial size that we had envisioned, we would have to probably go out about 3 miles in intercepting drains, which is just not feasible, and then also creates other impacts on other portions of the Greater Sea project. Yvonne touched on this. I won't belabor it, but groundwater. One of the things we've learned a lot of is seasonality of the water supply, and we know that in the summer months and others, the water supply is just different, and it's not there consistently from the ag drains to the same degree for a number of factors. So as the state looks to move forward with the North Lake Demo project here, it's going to need wells, at least a well and perhaps more, to be able to deal with that seasonality, so that that doesn't continue to ebb and flow over time. Geotech site conditions. We could write a book, and I think we actually have. And I want to acknowledge, good segue to our consultant team, Michael Sleazy with Dudek and Chuck Greeley with West Yost, who've been along this journey for us. So much for their efforts, and Joseph Caldwell with Webb as well, because they've done all the hard work that's getting us to this point. So we found very soft clays, permeable fine sands, of course, the San Andreas Fault. What does this mean? This means that the cost of the berms is significantly larger and greater than initially envisioned, and will lead to greater cost out here that have to be balanced against all the other different components of the state project, because those berms are going to have to be reinforced in some fashion to be able to deal with the soil conditions. We think about flooding. Sometimes we just think about flooding, and certainly it's flood protection, and water is all beneficial. We need it. We want it. At the same time, and you all know this, living in this climate, it comes often,
and it comes concentrated. And that also has a challenging effect in any infrastructure that we build out here. So that as we're building berms or any other sort of conditions, we do have to account for those peak flows as well, so that that system doesn't get overwhelmed in those times, right? So that's been a real learning opportunity for us. All of this led us to kind of where we're at today, and where we're at today is the county team, and we're proud of our efforts, are going to be turning over to the state at the conclusion here of the end of the year, first part of next year. 30% plans, if you will, for this concept that you see here. And it involved increasing the wetlands area, reducing some of the lake area, but really working as an ecosystem together here to still provide that recreational component that we know is so important. So work, this will be foundational work, I know, for Joe and Yvonne and the state team as you move forward to integrate this into the other work that you're doing. Just a couple more slides and I will be done. Some challenges, limitations, water supply, seasonality I mentioned, soils conditions, which also lead to cost. And then how do we balance the water, right, with other phases of the state project? And certainly the regulatory process, and I've dealt with it for decades, and it's a reality in all of our infrastructure planning. I think in my experience here is particularly challenging because we're trying to balance, different things like wetlands restoration, extremely important. At the same time, how do we, with the water source that we have that comes from those drains that feeds the wetlands today, how do we do that and capture enough of that to create some beneficial use here for recreation? So we've learned a lot of lessons. I won't belabor them, but all this is informing the work moving forward on water quality, on soil mechanics and conditions, on other things, and we're turning over those plans to the state. We've also even looked at detail at things like water pipelines and where wells could be sited. So that, again, it's going to be needed to maintain the flows out here for seasonality. So geotech study, again, looking at berm designs and of course, public recreational opportunities. So I'll end with that note. And that concludes our presentation. Supervisor, I know you wanted to make some comments. Turn over to the chair and we'll go from there.
Supervisor.
Not necessarily. I think I made my comments earlier on today. If anything, there was a question about water quality, and I think we need to make sure we address that, especially, when we do have that stench that goes all the way out to LA. At least on a yearly basis, maybe sometimes twice a year. And I think somehow that needs to be addressed or discussed and get down to the bottom of that. I also want to make sure that at what point in time do we let make the public aware of what's going on here? I'm not sure exactly what the timing looks like. Obviously, we're pivoting a bit. It's not too far off from the original plan, but nonetheless, so I think now it's reinforced with the efforts of the state, which I think goes a long way, and with now the Army Corps of Engineers that we can actually refer to. And so I think that's something that we need to start thinking about. When do we actually put this on a one-pager, if you will, in layman's terms, as to what this potentially is going to look like and what people can look forward to, so that they know, and then timelines for that matter, costs associated, things of the nature that are in basic terminologies, so that people understand that we're moving forward. I think the sooner they know this information, the more informed they are, the better. Because once again, the more we hold off and, we're moving along, the more people start questioning what's going on. And at the same time, wondering, why are we not informing the public? So that's just one point I want to make as well. Other than that, like I mentioned, I am once again at a level now where I feel we're back on track again. It's just that we just got to push. You know, I say that cautiously, but at the same time, I'm hopeful. So let's continue to push and let's get this job done. I don't know how else to say it anymore. And Joe, I sense a little bit more on your end as well, your commitment, which I appreciate. And the fact is that as well, the governor, you have his ear. Let's try to make it happen. Some things happen before he terms out. Because once he terms out, you never know where you're going to be later. We don't know where people are going to be later at the state level. That is very real. We have to understand that piece of this puzzle too. So let's not forget about that. So that'll be my last point I'll make now.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Madam President, in closing, I would say that there is no action to be taken here today.
Right,
The grant does expire under its own terms at the end of the year. And there will be some future action necessary to dispense with the remaining 17 odd million dollars in the grant, but in the bond. But we're working with the state on ensuring that the North Lake is the anchor of the North Lake project, and that those funds are reflected in that. And we expect to bring something back to the board next in January.
Okay, so those monies are then intended specifically for the North Lake. Okay, whether it's the wetlands or, okay, stay in that area.
That's right.
Thank you. I
Madam
appreciate
Chair,
that clarification.
I just had a quick inquiry from me.
Sure.
I couldn't discern of the slide in terms of land acquisition or site control issues. Does Imperial Irrigation District have any influence, or is there any impact in regards to our property as it relates to North Lake project?
Yes, I think almost everybody on this on SSA has a sizable chunk of land, and so we'll need to work with your teams to make sure that we have access and alignment on what we're trying to do, and we're committed to that. This was kind of the first step in making sure that the board is generally wanting to go in this direction, and now we'll get to work with all of that on the land access side.
Can I just ask that our general manager be included in all those communications so that we can be kept up to speed as far as how those negotiations are going, whether they're solicited or unsolicited?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just quickly want to add that we have been coordinating and we have received temporary site access from IID, as well as almost all of the representatives here with the exception of Imperial County for this project, and that we have been providing updates to the technical staff at IID as well. So they're aware of the project.
Just an open invitation, should there be any delays in regards to that, to please keep the directors up to date on that as well.
You got it. Thank you.
And I do believe we have one public comment from Michael Cohen. I will ask you to keep it brief.
Thanks. I'll be brief. So very encouraging turn of events, Madam Chair. I'm delighted to see this project moving forward with the support of the board. Just want to revisit this question of legal rights, and want to, I guess, point out again that IID under the QSA delivered almost 800,000 acre feet of Colorado River water through various legal mechanisms to the Salton Sea as mitigation. I think next year Coachella is going to be transferring some of IID's water off to Metropolitan, close to 100,000 acre feet, and will be transferring a similar volume of water. Again, about 100,000 acre feet per year out of the valley. So that may be an opportunity to tap into some of that to demonstrate Coachella's interest in protecting the Salton Sea, or at least providing a little bit of water to this project. So it seems like there's an additional water supply, and I again encourage some of the resource agencies and the various state agencies, attorneys, to think creatively about how to tackle this problem and put that water to good use in the valley. Thank you.
And I hope Estrada was listening, although he's not present. We'll have to have him go back and listen to that comment, and
We'll sit
particularly
in front
from
of the TV
Stevie.
and replay it.
Yeah, play that excerpt for him. Fabulous. Thank you.
Next item.
Okay, next item.
So next on the agenda, Madam President, we have the Desert Shores project, and I have Paul Nahar on the line, who's going to briefly explain the findings from the Nicholas study. And then I have two requests for the board to move forward, but he will be very brief, I am sure.
Thank you, Patrick.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I apologize. My camera doesn't seem to be working. I'm pleased to inform you that the feasibility study for the restoration of the Desert Shores Finger Lakes project has been completed. It was performed by Nicholas Engineering in association with AECOM. This project is a community-driven initiative aimed at revitalizing the Finger Lakes and enhancing the livability for local residents. The feasibility study evaluated existing site conditions, technical challenges, estimated costs to determine a viable path forward. Based on the review of soils infiltration, liquefaction, slope stability, and water supply, the findings concluded that that there were several alternatives that were offered for this particular project. One would involve stabilization and lining of the channels by installing a soil layer and a membrane to reduce infiltration. This cost for the design, the engineering, the construction was defined at approximately $23 million. The second alternative that was provided was an opportunity to backfill and create a green space park conversion that would have a water feature. This would involve filling the main north-south Finger Lake from the adjacent Barrow site, while backfilling the remaining Finger Lakes with soil to create a green landscaped type park with irrigation that would be supplied by the groundwater well. The approximate cost of this particular alternative would be approximately $10 million. The third alternative involves a park conversion, which would include the backfilling of the Finger Lakes from the Barrow site and creating a landscape park with a limited water feature or no water feature. And the estimated cost for that particular project would be approximately $8 million. These are engineering estimates and don't include possible additional costs such as site control expenses, which I believe that Patrick is planning on addressing.
Okay. I think I am. I'm not sure I am. Anyway, thanks, Paul. And I would just highlight one thing. The third option was actually the second option, because we said if the locally preferred plan, which was to build a berm, drill a well, fill the hole, proved unfeasible, what would a mitigation look like? So we said, well, if we just filled it and landscaped it as a mitigation strategy, what would that look like? And then we came up with kind of a middle of the road strategy. And the idea wasn't to project any solution, but to help inform a discussion with the local stakeholders as to what they want and what is reasonably achievable. And what I presented in your board package is a memo that outlines two things that we have going on. One is one of the biggest challenges we're going to have with this project is site control, something that Jim Hanks has famously telegraphed to this board for a decade at least. And this particular project has 240 residential lots with wide diversity of ownership. And so in order to really implement that project, we've had substantive and transparent conversations with the community about utilizing eminent domain on the lake side of the properties in order to implement the project. And they're very receptive to it. But there is no real agency who has stepped up to do that. The authority does have eminent domain authority. This is within our jurisdiction. And I'm not asking for authority today, but I did want to bring to the board that acquiring or at least accessing these sites in order to implement this project is fundamental to being able to do anything with the project. So I wanted to see if there was great sensitivity from the board of approaching that? If so, then I don't know what direction we would go if we don't have that tool in the toolbox when we get to that point. The other is to have an actually fully engineered shovel-ready project to build and develop. The original grant that the authority was able to secure from the Bureau was $1.25 million, which based on the engineer's estimate at the time was sufficient to complete the project, obviously based on the geotechnical and hydrological challenges that have been identified. We're really talking somewhere between $8 and $23 million, but we don't have a full project design. So we went back to the Bureau and said, can we use the remainder, about $800,000 of the $1.25 million grant? And there's a bee flying around the dais, to $1.25 million grant to completely engineer and get this project in a shovel-ready form so that we know how much it's going to cost, so we can go knock on doors and talk to Joe to help us find funding to complete this project. So we're in the process of amending the grant agreement. I don't have a final grant agreement to present to you to approve, but what I am asking for is authorization to enter into a grant agreement that would allow up to all of the remaining grants for design purposes and permitting purposes to secure a shovel-ready project. That way, with the approval of the board's president, vice president, and subject to review of council, we can get this done by the end of the year before this grant expires. And the second thing is just the general guidance and direction from the board that if all other options for site control fail and the residents are on board with it, is eminent domain something that we are comfortable with. We don't need to make a decision on that today, but if the answer is that's a bridge too far, then that would certainly change our direction. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I suspect there may be members of the public who might want to comment on this as well.
Madam Chair, I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
Number one, I would not be comfortable moving down eminent domain without us first establishing a real estate policy. And I'm not sure if we do have a real estate policy. Just for point of reference, the way Imperial Irrigation District addresses policy around real estate is, number one, we do not necessarily engage in real estate transactions above fair market value. So should there be real estate and the offer is above fair market value, we have given our general manager discretion to consider 15% above fair market value. That policy is live and well within the district. Outside of the 15% above fair market value, then that comes down to a board policy type of decision. Should those efforts then fail, then the exploratory conversation regarding eminent domain in a very public setting is then considered. So I'm not sure, Mr. O'Dowd, if we do have a real estate policy regarding real estate acquisition and whether or not we are tethered to fair market value. And when that fails, then the ability to exercise eminent domain then becomes a natural step subject to a 4/5 vote. So I, again, would ask for just clarity on where we're at as far from a policy standpoint on real estate acquisition. And if we need to come up with a policy that we look at Riverside County, Imperial County, and some of the agency as far as what they use in terms of real estate acquisition before pursuing an eminent domain as a measure of good faith. So let me stop right there and just inquire if we currently have an active real estate policy that maybe references fair market value.
No, but that is helpful guidance. Generally, we follow CVWD's policies, but I think, this is something we're, like I said, we're not acting on today, but any additional guidance is exactly why I'm here. But that's something we would have in place before we took any recommendation to the board to proceed. We're not there yet. We just wanted to make sure that in order to implement this project, we had the tools necessary to do it. And there, to the extent that there are unknown risks, I think that we need to be prudent in assessing those risks and making sure that the board and the public understands what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Thank you. And I will just say, from my personal standpoint, it takes a lot to move me over to eminent domain. And I would also need to hear from the residents that they were okay with that, because I just, it's a difficult, situation. So I will give my 2 cents.
So,
Okay. I won't touch it.
so when we were doing the testing, right, we had to gain access to 18 sites.
Right.
A great difficulty to do that. We were
Right.
able to do it.
Reckon.
The homeowners are well aware of the challenges that implementing any project would be, but I understand what you're saying, and I don't think there's an elected official that would differ in any material sense from your sensitivities. And I respect that and appreciate it.
Anybody else? Oh, yes. Brian Dillon.
So I've been engaged in these conversations, and when this was first brought up, eminent domain, certainly not where I want to go. But there is a long list of property owners, but the largest and the basin of the channels is owned by the Salton Community Service District under a channel maintenance that was dissolved. So the biggest piece of property that would make this possible would be a government, and I hope that that conversation is progressing on transferring that. But I know that between SSA, GAFCON, and natural resources, that there will be a conversation, there will be options, and I believe that eminent domain will be one, but easements and other actions will be a possibility as well.
Thank you.
So that just in context, if you've been there, it's a slope. We're not talking about taking their lawn or their patio. It's just the slope of the channel, which they can't make use of at the moment anyways.
It's previously underwater.
And I would be encouraged to hear what they prefer, if they don't mind it being landfilled, or if they would prefer water.
So that would be how the remaining funds would be used.
Right.
With their input to develop a project that we think we can fund and actually build. So this is a community, this has always been a community driven exercise. They started this. Go ahead.
So that brings me to my other note for Joe here. So yeah, this was started in 2015. This was an RFP that the county sent out asking for projects on the Salton Sea. We didn't have any money to fund it, but we got 10 valued projects. Some of those were initiated by owners without any money, like on San Felipe Creek and then some other drainage areas. But then one of them was Desert Shores Restoration. So 10 years ago that came forward. We gave that to after the amended water order, shared it with the state natural resources and the first assistant secretary, Bruce Wilcox. And so at this moment, I would, and I had written this down, Joe, that maybe that's another opportunity 10 years later to do it again. And not bind any obligation for funding, but see what's out there locally that can be done on the ground, if they have site control, and that they're going to be doing something with habitat, water quality, air mitigation. So that's just an ask I threw out because you gave me the segue.
Yeah, that I think is a great conversation to have. I think a follow-up on land access strategy is the appropriate next step. I had a great conversation with I think it was Ryan Dominguez from Eco Media Compass like 2 days ago, where I just gave like a stream of consciousness thoughts on potentially viable climate bond Prop 4 funding opportunities. So I think he has those, is going to look into those. We can continue to connect, but land access is going to be the next step. And I know that that's what General Manager O'Dowd is working on. So good stuff.
Tom Sefton has a,
Pardon?
Tom Sefton.
Tom Septon, that's here.
Thank you for the unmute. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. Just want to say the community did discuss this, particularly within the oversight committee and various community members. And there is a strong preference for water, not for fill it in with dirt and walk away. So just be aware that so far the consensus of the community is for an actual revitalization of the Desert Shores channels, not turning it into a landfill. And I think you will find that the majority of residents in the area follow that. And I will also just note that the community did present an option to the Salton Sea Authority and Nicholas Engineering and AECom that would not require eminent domain and could be done on county right of way. Solely the Salton Sea Authority has chosen not to look at that. But if there were a problem with exercising eminent domain, it is not necessarily the only way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Jasmine.
Jasmine Phillips, you're up.
I recently heard very encouraging reports back from the SCH project, how fish and pelicans and numerous other birds are returning to that aquatic habitat. This is what residents would like to see out in Desert Shores. We are supportive of projects that will completely refill the Desert Shores channels. We are not in favor of backfilling and creating a park-like situation. It is a small project, acreage size, but it can have a big impact habitat for wildlife and for people and for the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's all. I would comment very briefly that to Mr. Sefton's comment, we haven't opined on any specific project at all. That's what the design process would determine.
Okay.
Madam Chair, in regards to the second request, I'm not opposed to giving discretion to our general manager, executive director regarding the decisions that need to be made in reference to the grant agreement.
The grant expiration.
Is that a movement?
Yeah, is that a motion?
I'll go ahead and memorialize that through a motion.
It has been a motion by Director Cardenas, seconded by Supervisor Ryan Kelly, that we go ahead and give our executive director discretion in that utilizing the grant expiration, doing what he needs to do there. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Moving on to Desert Shores.
We just did Desert
Oh,
Shores.
we did.
Moving on.
No, that's right.
Strategic planning.
We're moving
Okay,
up.
what about North Lake? We didn't have
Oh, we
to
talked about that. We're moving up, not moving down.
make a motion though.
We didn't, there was no action required.
No action. My
It's getting
notes
late.
say to take action. Beg your pardon. So there you go. Okay, and now I'm going to, in the essence of time, right? Are we going back then to the task force? Is everybody fine with staying forever? Just kidding.
I think we can dispense with the task force conversation. That's just informational. I think we could move to the strategic planning.
Okay, let's move on to strategic planning. Thank you.
Although there's an excellent memo in your board packet, I would encourage every board member to read it.
I did read it. Thank you. All right.
I read
Beatrice,
it.
you're up.
No, I'm good.
No AI.
Low blood sugar, low blood sugar. Oh, sugar. That bees and come back for you.
It's like that. It's going to be a long thing. Yeah, okay. It's
They were both on. Listen, I can hear that.
I see.
No, I don't want to keep thinking about. I don't want to keep.
You get that one. Better.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Madam President and members of the board and members of the public. In case you're not familiar, we are from CB Strategies. That's a local strategic firm, communications strategic firm located in Palm Desert, California. My name is Jennifer Pullen. I am the account manager working alongside with Beatrice Eslamboli. She's the Chief Operating Officer, and we have been working diligently on developing a strategic plan for the authority.
Hey, Teddy, how you doing? Well, I'm okay.
Hi, Tom.
Yeah, I'm sorry I got angry at you with that.
Tom, you're live.
And on the record.
So, you know.
Well,
That's Tom.
Today, we'd like to report back from a strategic planning workshop that we facilitated with the board, with some stakeholders in the community and some community members. On October 27th, we held a strategic planning workshop where we came together to identify some of the findings and work through some of the priorities that we came to understand and learn through the one-on-one, or actually two-on-one sessions that we had with the board of directors.
the purpose of the workshop really gave the board members and staff an opportunity to kind of take a pause, step back, and look at the bigger picture and really openly and candidly discuss how we are going to align going forward with the authority for the next 5 years. So what occurred at the workshop was really our goal was to facilitate collaboration among the board as well as staff members. The participants, we reviewed key themes that we gathered from our one-on-one interviews. We also revisited the top priority areas. We ranked and grouped priorities on a whiteboard, which you'll see in a further slide. And we also discussed the barriers and opportunities that present themselves to the authority. So these were the top themes that were identified during our one-on-one interview sessions. As you can see, there's public health, stakeholder collaboration, recreation, revitalization. These are all things that we hear time and time again at meetings such as this. So our approach to narrowing down each of these priority areas, and I just want to clarify for members of the public, you usually associate green, yellow, and red with go, slow down, and stop. That's not what's represented here. So I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. What it is really what we provided to the board members who participated. We provided green Post-it notes that represented what were high levels of priority for the authority moving forward in the next 5 years. Yellow's mid-level and red is lower priority. But I don't want anyone to think that red means a complete stop. But as you can see here on this whiteboard, it really tells the story as to where board members see the vision of the authority going in the next 5 years and where we need to focus.
The workshop was a very productive day for board members and our team alike. Gathering this information is that from the one-on-one meetings, we knew what each board member's priorities were for the next 3 years, but I'm not sure there was ever an instance where you all came together and talked about your priorities or what you see the authority doing for the next 3 to 5 years. This gave us an opportunity to rank them in front with each other and then discuss the reasons why each board member found them to be a yellow, green, or red marking.
This will get me moving to the back.
Just watching the end
So
of
to
this.
clarify,
I think I'm gonna head out for a little bit if you don't mind.
so that sounds like someone needs to mute on Zoom. To clarify, these were the anchors that will be used in developing the strategic plan, governance, stakeholder collaboration, and protecting public health. Funding is something that's kind of a given the situation of the authority and moving forward with projects. That's something that's always actively being done in order to ensure that we meet all the objectives. So as you can see, we need governance, stakeholder collaboration, as well as to move forward in protecting public health and ultimately reach the goal of economic development and recreation revitalization here at the Salton Sea. So one of the strong areas of focus that was identified amongst this exercise was the board's desire to clarify member roles, as well as increase visibility of what the authority is actively doing and trying to accomplish, and as well as provide stakeholders with progress and all, as well as provide unified messaging for the board members to report back to their member agencies. The authority serves as a regional convener. They're kind of like the hub. Everything comes through the authority. So stakeholder collaboration and outreach is going to be a key focus area in the strategic plan. It's important to keep those lines of communication open as well as outreach and to tell the story of the authority. And
we heard that a few times today is we're just hearing about this and we don't tell the public this story, or when do we tell the public or the greater public this story? And that should be discussed and planned out so that there is support for the authority moving forward by gaining and building on those previous successes and the increased visibility that it will bring you.
And I think the key for all stakeholders is the demonstration of progress of the authority. The strongest area of focus is public health. That aligns with the authority's mission, so that came naturally. And that's to restore the environment, air quality, suppress dust mitigation. These are all things that intersect with public health. It was emphasized by the board that they would like to see the Army Corps of Engineers feasibility study completed, and as well as continue momentum by coordination of the facility task force. So in addition to the strategic plan, we heard from members of the board, and as we heard from today, the Gantt chart, we are going to include a Gantt chart with the strategic plan that gives everyone a tool of measurement as to where the successes lie as you work through the strategic plan. This is a snapshot of what should happen in 2026 after adoption of the strategic plan.
So we're building out a roadmap to success. We're at the finish line and we're building out a roadmap to success and what that would look like.
So our next steps are to continue working out what those timelines look like with the general manager, finalize, incorporate our findings from the workshop, and identify goals and objectives that support those priorities, and then present the final plan for board adoption.
And we'll be ready to present at your next meeting. We're working on that plan right now.
With that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate the endeavor. I appreciate the work that you went to, the pre-interviews and the strategic plan, also to the people that showed up as well.
It was very telling to see who showed up, and they already left. Iron Dad, and
Larissa.
Yes, but the participation and the workshop was very fruitful for us, and it came out from your board letting us know at the 2-on-1s or 1-on-1 meetings is we have more work to do. And getting together and doing that difficult work. And here we are, ready to develop and implement a plan for the next 3 to 5 years.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I know I wasn't at the actual strategic plan. I got sick that day, but I did, leading up to it, the 1-to-1 interview, I thought it was really helpful. And I thought you guys did a great job of extracting answers to your questions. So I just want to applaud you. I think it was a good 1-on-1 that I had. And, hopefully a strategic plan one as well as the 1-on-1, it should be a good document to move forward.
Well, thank you. And we appreciate your candor in those meetings and really sharing your vision and candor with us. It really does make for that better plan. And now with regards to, do we have the other slide? Okay.
No.
Did you want to take?
Time to go. Technical difficulty.
So with respect to the strategic planning exercise, it was outside of the original scope of the engagement with CV Strategies. And we did use some of the funds that were allocated under the original scope, but we don't have enough to complete the work. The total effort is about a $30,000 effort. There's $20,000 worth of existing invoices for work already accomplished and an additional $10,000 to finish the strategic plan. I do have money in the budget to accomplish the work. I just wanted to secure board approval to fund the balance of this effort. So I would request the board authorize the completion of this exercise for a total cost not to exceed the 30 grand.
Madam Chair, may I make an inquiry?
Yes.
So am I hearing that we already have an earmark for this in our budget?
And where is it in the budget?
We have a line item budget. The very last item is funds of a total of $60,000 that I set aside for public relations communications purposes. You'll recall that we approved an initial 6-month engagement. So I have the remainder of 6 months available uncommitted funds that we can use to fund the balance of this exercise.
So if we are successful with the motion, we're not asking for a budget amendment. We're just asking that we exhaust the current earmark.
Just approving their amended scope of work.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Can I have a second? Good. Second, Supervisor Perez. All those in favor? Aye.
Yes.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We do too.
Sure.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna get fired up here.
Yeah, you are.
I know. Federal, are we going to? Thank you, ladies.
I moved
Lisa.
that fire, Gina.
I know.
So in light of the strategic planning exercise, working with Lisa, she put together a dashboard of some of the work that has been done, and I'd like her to share that with the board.
So I wish I were there and I could get everybody a Celsius. This has been a great meeting. It's been a long meeting. I do think some of what I have to say really relates to some of the topics that have come up. I will try to kind of run through this quickly. Patrick, after the strategic plan, asked me to really put together kind of like a sort of bullets or something along those lines of federal, sort of our federal advocacy journey, I might call it. I sat down and thought what would be helpful. I thought would be helpful for the board. We have a lot of turnover, from time to time on the board. This work goes back to actually before 2016. And so I just put together what I hope to be something I can kind of continue to add to, but really sort of a timeline, but with documents included for, just people to remember the work that we've done. Some of these, all of these tools are still available to us. And I think, in hearing what everybody's discussed, where this really began, and it kind of goes back to what Corey said, Carrie said from the core, which was, right, that plan, the feasibility study, we're going to have to demonstrate that that the work is in the federal interest, right? And so the beginning of the federal advocacy work, when I started working on this, and I will say everything I'm talking about, in this presentation, this was a combined effort. Patrick was involved when he was at CVWD. I first started working on this with Bruce Wilcox when I met him in his trailer at IID with Director Hanks. Kevin Kelly became a very forceful advocate for this work. Phil, when he was the general manager of the authority. So I just sort of want to say that everything I'm kind of talking about, we worked as a team to start to put these tools in place. But when we started, really the focus was, and understandably so, on, again, in a different administration, not this one, was getting really the state moving on its QSA obligations. And that was very much the focus. I come from a federal background. I actually worked for Senator Boxer. I worked on the Salton Sea in the 90s. I then went on and worked in Senate Environment Committee on WRDAs for a long period of time. I worked for Senator Reed from Nevada. After that. And I sort of looked at it and thought, well, the federal government should pony up here because that's sort of the lens that I apply to things like this. And so I'll share my screen now just to sort of walk you through a little bit of, sort of how this started and how we kind of got really in part to the Corps of Engineers work. Back in the day, one of the first things we started really working towards, and because we're in such an agricultural watershed, was working with USDA. And a lot of these tools that we're talking about, that if you kind of come into here, and Patrick will share this site with you, you can kind of click on that, and it sort of describes sort of what the work was and the theory behind the work that we were doing at the time. The Watershed Act is actually kind of like a mini Corps of Engineers project. And to Janet's point earlier about, gosh, why does this stuff take so long? The USDA sort of Watershed Act is like a mini version of a Corps of Engineers feasibility study. They just have less procedural requirements than the Corps. On the negative side, the upshot of the amount of money you can get out of USDA for one of these projects is about a couple $100 million. So it's not the same as the Corps of Engineers by any stretch. But this was an authority that we worked with. We restored money to the program with the help of Senator Feinstein and Senator Reed. We then came in and actually, on behalf of CNRA, we drafted an application to USDA to access the initial sort of planning funding that you would get under that program. So if you kind of click down here, you can kind of see, this is when we got the grant award, and this was some of the work that we were doing with the state. What happened here in part was, and this is sort of goes to Director Perez's comments earlier, we just are having a change of administration, right? We're moving from one administration to another. And so although we got the funding to start, the state, when it sort of came in and changed the Newsom administration, they were working on some other priorities. And so unfortunately, that never sort of came to pass. Senator Boxer, who I had worked for a time period, was interested in trying to leverage EPA funding. We did some work at the authority on this statute. We worked with Senator Boxer before she retired to amend the statute to make it easier to apply the financing in that program to the Salton Sea. We then the authority drafted on behalf of the state an application, sort of similar story to the USDA funding pool. Although we were the most highly ranked application, the funding assurances that the state needed to provide were not forthcoming at that time. we moved on to continue to sort of work with USDA. Part of the purpose for this was that USDA actually does do a sort of large number of projects like some of the ones that we needed to be done. And so we worked a lot with Senator Feinstein to craft changes to that statute. Those all still exist. So there's a number of different federal tools here that could be leveraged, but you can see down here, sort of these are the text of amendments that we helped to create, and different advocacy efforts we did to then try to liberate that money on behalf of the Salton Sea. Part of the reason for this Farm Bill work was really at this point in time, we're sort of seeing, right, the increasing demands on the region for additional water conservation, and understanding that if we were to have that, we would have additional impacts, to the sea. So really the Farm Bill work was intended to create funding pools that could be helped to we could tap for mitigation for what might come down the pike, Colorado River wise. While we were doing that, the proposal, instead of funding mitigation that came out of the Reclamation Department at the time, was to simply void the public health and environmental laws that protect the region. The authority worked very hard actually to turn back that particular provision, and succeeded in 2019 in doing that. That really led us to sort of created additional visibility, I think, federally for the Salton Sea. And so we that led to the 2020 we had a 2020 hearing that was referred to earlier, which I think I just missed. But anyway, that leads us into, right, so we've sort of worked with EPA, we've worked with USDA. The Corps of Engineers actually had an authorization that Senator Boxer secured in 2007. She updated it in 2016. There are a variety of reasons why those never came to pass. Congressman Maurice was very intent on trying again, essentially. And so the idea behind the work with WRDA in 2020 really was to see if we could engage the Corps again and get them interested in working in the Salton Sea. And we were actually successful in securing a new authorization. That was really Congressman Ruiz's work, and then the Senate followed suit in that. And so that was sort of the start of our Corps of Engineers journey. And to the, it is a journey. It does take a long time. I will say the concept behind a lot of these federal tools was the idea that the state was doing its work on SSMP. When CNRA came in the Newsom administration, I can remember Secretary Crowfoot going down to IID, and IID working, very closely with the secretary to really get SCH, moving. They just put a lot of resources into that effort. The intent behind this stream really was to create, if you have kind of SSMP moving forward, the idea behind these tools was to have federal tools come in for really a long range, right? Whatever the long range plan was gonna look like, right? If SSMP is the first 10 years, right? The idea is like, yes, the Corps of Engineers, it takes time to actually, get your chief's report. However, right, there's a big upside. And so that was really the kind of intention, thinking through it as from a timeline perspective, kind of how that kind of came to be. Getting the study and the authorization is one thing. We were one of only 3 to get it. That was direct lobbying by the authority to secure that. After you do that, you actually have to get appropriations. So we were successful initially at getting the initial money. As this was happening for the first time, the federal government, the Bureau of Reclamation, actually acknowledged that it had federal liability for the management of its own land. So you can see here, this is the budget document from Reclamation.
Lisa, and I'm really trying to make sure this doesn't turn into a 3-hour meeting.
Okay,
so
sorry.
So the document that you're showing us really is basically to be put on the website, basically to showcase what SSA has done. Is that correct?
It is, yes. And so if you scroll through sort of the rest here, you will see sort of the work that has gone on, in particular for the Corps of Engineers work. I will say, moving forward, right, it seems like everybody's on board. This is a very high priority, right? There are several additional congressional steps. All of the work that's gone into it is sort of maybe 20% of the work that will need to be done to bring it home. So thanks for your patience. I didn't know it was going to be quite this long of a meeting.
Yeah, me
So,
neither.
so there's an enormous lot of work that went into pulling this together.
Yeah, I
think
know.
it's very instructive. So I appreciate you affording the opportunity for her to make the presentation.
No, and I think it's good. I think it would have been helpful for maybe the entire board to have seen it ahead of time and read it. I realize I did, but not everybody was privy to seeing it. But I think they should see it also before it goes live.
Before it goes up.
Yes, I believe, and that's why I'm also hurrying up Lisa in case this needs to be brought back at our next meeting as well.
Okay.
Sure, and it wasn't
So-
really actually, I didn't really draft it intentionally to put it on the website or as a website. I put it together really as a document for kind of education purposes, and so there'd be a living place. This isn't published, or I don't think we've published it anywhere. It wasn't intended as that. I just didn't want to just give you a bullet list of things. I wanted to be able to show you, what does it look like when we talk about, right, doing this work in a tangible way, right? When I say I've done an approach request at your direction, what does that look like? So you'll be able to, you can click on it and see it. You can decide to put it, we could put it on the website, but I really was intending to just try to show, like in math, right? Just show the work so that you had a little bit better, potentially better understanding of what has gone into the advocacy and how we've gotten really to the place that we're at with the core, which I personally am very grateful for. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I do appreciate it. And I misunderstood. I thought the whole purpose was to put this on the website, like as a link. So, but thank you. I do appreciate it. And I don't mean to cut you short. It's just, it is a long document and I do think it's well worth it, exploring and seeing the timeline. So I do appreciate the work that went into that.
Sure. Thanks.
Does anybody else have any comments?
Yes. This is Janet Wilson again. This looks like an incredible document. Is there some discussion that it's not going to be made public because it's public funds for the work and it's public agencies and it certainly deserves to be made public?
All I meant, Janet, was I hadn't sought authorization from the board.
No, I got it. I'm talking about the authority.
Yeah, we haven't talked about it, so I wasn't trying to to the director's point, I wasn't trying to spring it on you and then publish it. I was intending to use it as a presentation because when we had our workshop, we didn't really get an opportunity to discuss federal advocacy and there was some confusion. And so I wanted to just really try to pull it all together in one place. So anyway.
No, and I think it's great. I don't have an opposition to publishing it. Just there's a couple of spelling errors. There's a couple of singular. There's just some stuff that needs to be fixed before. That's all.
Yeah, I did. The version that unfortunately the version that you got sent wasn't the final version, but I believe it's cleaned up. But everybody should take a look at it. I just wanted to be clear about what the intent was so that it didn't seem like I was trying to jam the directors. I was really just trying to provide a more fulsome presentation compared to
I think we should all take a look at it. I mean, and you put a lot of work into it too. So yeah, my intent is not to not publish it, and that's all. So anybody else? No other comments? Lisa, Patrick?
Are you kidding?
Yeah, good idea. I am. I'm kidding. I'm joking. Sorry, Lisa. I realize I'm cutting you off, but I have 15 minutes until the 3-hour mark.
You're gonna make
It's supposed to be a 2-hour meeting. So is that all from you, Lisa? I shouldn't say all, but and then perhaps I can.
No worries. Patrick and I were texting back and forth to kick it to January, and so anyway, we could have done that. I just
Yeah.
I
I think that
appreciate
would
where
be
you're
good. And let's include it in the board packet so everybody gets a hard copy. That would be fabulous.
It's just an important tool.
Agreed.
And
I agree.
And this is the best I could kind of put together in advance of this meeting, too. So there's certainly more I could add to it, but why don't we start here? So, and I'll let Nick go. I think I don't know if I can kick it to Nick. Maybe I think the director has to do that.
So kick it to Nick.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Lisa.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair. Nick Romo, Recruit Strategies. I'll be briefing on something we can bring back in greater detail at the next board meeting, but I definitely wanted to just quickly highlight to you that we are in the throes of beginning our 2026 advocacy plan. Really informed by the strategic plan update, as well as many great discussions with Lisa as well about how, and many of the board members on how we need to pivot and adjust our strategy plan. So really focusing in on 2026, continue to build resources for the authority. I really heard loud and clear a focus on community engagement, needing to bring funds to the authority and also awareness as to the authorities positioning as a sort of hub and convener for the region. And then one last slide just to show you, and we will bring it back in the next board meeting to go in detail. But I certainly want to lay out a series of actions for the board and the authority as a whole to take in 2026, including a proposed Sacramento visit to walk the halls, to talk to our delegation, talk to our legislative leadership and our administration officials in Sacramento, to tell them about the story that you all are creating, as well as all the great work you're doing. So we certainly want to do that and achieve that in 2026. I'm happy to bring back more details at the next board meeting, Chair, and respect for time.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. Can we move on to Mr. Miguel Hernandez? I'm assuming no one has questions. No questions. You got it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll keep it super short. Save a date. Next community meetings for Salton Management Program, end of the year recap. Corey mentioned a little bit of that. They're going to be, fingers crossed, going to be part of our meeting as well. We're going to do project updates, what's happening with the feasibility study, and just share what we got going on with the program and what's next for the program as well. So save the date, Wednesday, December 17th at the Brawley High School. And then the next day, Thursday, December 18th at the Coachella Library during the evening, 5:30. Hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Wait, what time at the high school?
5:30
5:30.
for both events. So again, it's the 17th, 5:30 in Brawley, 18th, 5:30 in Coachella Library.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Salton Sea Recreation Area update. Do we have Enrique? Is he online? Oh, he did. He left a message in the comments. He said, "I'm having lunch."
Yeah.
Fabulous. No. Okay. Thank you. Salton Sea Action Committee.
Alan is not available. He had to leave.
Okay, you're up, Patrick.
I'm done.
Thank you. Fabulous meeting, everybody. Thank you for coming.
All
If
right.
there's nothing else, meeting is adjourned.
We did it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Listen, who did you replace?